Welcome, everyone, to another episode of the Health Made Simple Show. I'm your host, Dr. Bart. So, you buy pasture-raised eggs thinking you're doing something great. Then, suddenly, you hear they're high in omega-3 oils, and maybe these eggs, these pasture-raised organic eggs, they're inflammatory. So by now, many of you have heard that the Vital Farms controversy, or the conversation maybe we can talk about around Vital Farms. So what's actually true? Or is this just all noise? I'm going to cover all that today. So this is not about fear. This is not about blaming farms. This is really just about understanding fats today. Because when you understand the facts, this actually gets really simple. And I don't want to go beating up on any companies. I always think that they intended to start off good and then maybe they got bigger. So omega-3s versus omega-6, super simple physiology. Omega-3s, these are calming fats. Think anti-inflammatory, brain building, cell membrane. They're flexible and they're super good for mitochondrial support. They're also heart protective. These are all repair fats. These are the really, really good ones. Now, omega-6s doesn't mean these are bad. These are activation fats. Think immune response. They help with clotting. You cut yourself. These are omega-6s. They do help with inflammation. They do help with healing. These are really what we call the alert fats. So the key here is this. We need both. The problem is when we get omega-3s dominating the situation, then inflammation starts to increase. So omega-6s by themselves, there's nothing wrong with them. It's the ratio where it comes from. So where do they come from? Omega-3s, typically, they come from wild salmon, sardines, mackerel, trout. Fish oils is really the gold standard here. Grass-fed beef, pasture eggs, and assumably pasture-raised organic eggs. You can easily even get it from flax and chia seed. It just has a weak conversion from the ALAs into the DH and EPA. Really, the conversion is poor. So really, fish is the king here. And that's why we hear so much about fish oils from omega-3. So omega-6 foods. This is where most people technically overload. This is the soybean oil. This is the corn oil. This is the canola oil, seed oils, fried foods, processed snacks, conventional chicken feeds. And we'll get into those in just a moment. But this is where it all ties together. See, I have chickens. We specifically do not feed them any corn or any soy. Why? Because we know it taints the ratio of the omega-3s to 6. It raises the 6. And we're trying to eat these things so we get a lot of good 3s. So almost every restaurant out there that you go out to eat at, omega-6 oils. That's what you're getting. They are cooked in canola oil, unless, of course, you come hang out at our restaurant, Prima Organic Cafe. We don't use any of this. So here's the aha. Historically, a 1-to-1 ratio, maybe 2-to-1, but today it's about 15-to-1 or 20-to-1 relative to omega-6 is 3. And what does that mean? Stiff cell membranes, chronic inflammation, brain inflammation, and metabolic dysfunction. So too much of one thing, like omega-6, this is a problem. So most diseases, again, it's not just the deficiency here, but it's the massive imbalance. So let's bring this all back to eggs. This is going to be a quick one today, folks. Let's go back to the chickens and the eggs. So the eggs are basically what the chickens eat. If you feed them corn and soy, you're going to increase the omega-6s. You're going to increase the inflammatory potential for them. So eggs aren't bad. The feed quality matters. And again, when we feed our eggs here at our farm, we're only feeding the good stuff. And no, we don't sell them. So there's not an agenda that I have here today. The egg didn't change. I want to keep that in mind. The food supply changed. So this starts to correlate back to so many things as human beings. What we put into our humans are good. Chickens are good. Eggs are good. It's what we put in them is really the problem. So when we look at our eggs, we want to encourage a couple things. And this is where it gets a little ironic with Vital Farms. We want them to be pasture raised. We'd like to use local farms. And ideally, it's all organic. Now, in the past, I have 100% been on board. I would tell you to go to the grocery store. And often I would use that label, that brand, Vital Farms, because right on the label, it says pasture raised and organic. And I would be one of the ones convincing you, or at least encouraging you, saying, hey, listen, spend the extra couple bucks, because this way, at least, one of the greatest benefits, one of the many benefits that can come from eggs. Remember, eggs are a superfood for humans. B vitamins for the brain, choline, fantastic, super good fats in there, lots of protein, very bioavailable types of protein. The challenge here is this: the Vital Farms, they unfortunately weren't all pasture raised and all organic. They were being fed. And this is where I guess the misleading part gets a little bit when it comes to maybe the company and what it's been telling the public, that they've been feeding them a lot of corn and soy. And this is across the board very common in the egg world. They can feed them organic corn and soy. And even though it's organic, it's still going to raise that ratio of omega 6s, omega 3s, which now turns this incredible food from a very, very rich omega 3 anti inflammatory, brain protective, mitochondrial supporting food to probably something that's less than that. Is it a bad food for us? Probably not. Is it the best that it can be, or are you getting what you're expecting you're getting when you're spending $10 a dozen or whatever it may be? I think they're less than that now, but whatever it may be versus you're spending, the $2 or $3. Typically, you pay for what you get. And I think that's pretty accurate right across the board. Most things in life, you pay for what you get. So I got to eat some of my words about Vital Farms, and I'm hoping that they're going to correct this the best that they can. And if not, this is an opportunity for all of us to go hunt down your local farmers, ask them the questions. Do you feed them corn and soy? I will tell you up front, do not be disappointed when you run into 9 out of 10, even your local farmers, feed them corn and soy. The reason is this, folks, very simple. It's a fraction of the cost. If you saw my eggs, my chickens here, I'm at a farm, I'm sitting at a farm today. Our eggs, they run around, they have about 3+ acres. We have more than that, but that's their pen that they have to kind of roam around. So they are free range, pasture raised. We also supplement their food, and the food that we buy for them is very expensive. It is probably anywhere from 7 to 8 to 10 times the cost if I just want to feed them corn and soy. So it is a real deal. And so that is why a true pasture raised organic chicken that's being fed properly, it's pasture raised, eating the bugs, eating the grass, eating all those good things out there, and it's being supplemented with some foods. We find that we have to supplement ours because they're only around 3 acres. They beat up the 3 acres pretty fast. So it does cost more money to have eggs like that. Now, with that being said, here is the big reason any of this even matters. So everything you've heard, the controversy, getting mad at Vital Farms or anything they've said or not said or any of the other companies, this is what really matters. At the end of the day, why we care that there's omega 3s and 6s is mostly because of its impact on 2 things. 1, inflammation in the body. You use omega 3s to help resolve, they're called resolvents, to help resolve the inflammatory processes that take place in our body. And the second, and this is the reason I'm such an advocate of understanding the role that omega 3s play in our brain and also understanding how to test for them, because this is what matters when it comes to brain protection. If we are not protecting our brains, we better start, because here's why. By 2050, the neurodegenerative diseases, the big boys, the top 3, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, and dementia, are supposed to triple by 2050. And I will tell you this, folks, I've been practicing for a long period of time, nearly 30 years now. One of the most heartbreaking scenarios to watch is when someone or family members have to deal with someone in their family that has a neurodegenerative disease. To me, I think all diseases suck. And I think the neurodegenerative diseases are the most torturous on family members. And in the person having them too, for some matter, but especially the torture on the family members. And this number is rising rapidly. And it's not just for the 70-year-old anymore. We're now seeing late 40s, 50-year-olds having these neurodegenerative diseases, problems, dementia, Parkinson's, Alzheimer's. And it's because I'm simplifying, but for the most part, it's because we have too many omega 6s. We have too much inflammation, inflaming the brain, and the brain doesn't have enough omega 3s to protect it. And we can test this. So I'll get into that in just a moment. If this matters to you, and clearly it does, or you wouldn't be listening to this, then test. It's a very simple test. It's an omega 3 test. It's omega 3 status. You don't guess, right? We don't want to guess when it comes down to something like this. It's very simple. It's an at-home test. Usually costs less than $100. Heck, I think it's like a $70 test. We run in our office. In fact, I'll make sure there's a link here. We can send it to you anywhere you are. And I'm very surprised, actually, how poorly about 90% of the people that we test actually the results that they get in, including myself. When I first tested my omega-3 status, I was very surprised to find out that I did not test well. There's a percentage of omega-3s that you'd like to have floating around in your blood. And that percentage, you'd like it to be over 8%. When I first started testing myself and a lot of our clients years ago, we were seeing people that were claiming to have really clean diets and eating fish throughout the day and having their grass-fed burgers score in the 4s, the 5s, the 6s, which is bad. And we have a lot of people who come back in the 2s, which means their brains aren't protected. It's very indicative of what future health for your brain looks like. Now, folks, this is one of the easier tests to do. You do not even have to leave your house. I've talked about it on my podcast a lot before. One of the reasons I add this to most of our protocols, or not our protocols, but really to our testing when someone wants a comprehensive health test. I run a comprehensive male and a comprehensive female panel, and then I add this omega test because if we're having conversations about longevity, we have to understand our omega-3 status. And even for those of us out there that think we're really doing a good job, it's shocking sometimes when we really look at the ratio or the percentage of omega-3s floating around in the blood. So we want that status to be above 8%, 8, 9, 10%, great. And I would say that less than 10% of the people that I test score at that until you find out. And then the beauty is you then take actions. In the actions you take, and I'll get into those in just a moment here. And then when we retest, we almost see everybody improve their omega-3 status, which is great. All right. So with that being said, the omega-3 index test, it's very simple. It's a finger prick test. Prick your finger, put a bunch of blood on this little piece of paper, and then you send it. It takes 5 minutes, and it measures your EPA and DHA in the red blood cells. It shows basically what your status would be for the last 3 or 4 months. Under 4%, this is a risky factor. 6%-ish, that's probably pretty average. 8% or greater, that is protective. And again, I don't like guessing with supplements. We measure, we adjust our actions, and then we retest. This is like the simplest way to do it. So here's the simple plan. 1, upgrade your eggs. Go find a farmer, go find somebody who is doing it right. Eat fatty fish 2 to 3 times a week. What are the fish that we're talking about here? Kind of simple here. I think salmon's probably the gold standard. Then we have things like mackerel, trout, sardines is one of my favorite here. Add quality fish oils. So that would be 1. Eat the fatty fish. Cut out the seed oils. So eat your fish at least 2 to 3 times a week. Cut out the seed oils. And that's going to be a difficult one because if you eat out at all, unfortunately, you're going to come across these omega-6s that are really bad form, very hard for the body to break down. And because we don't break them down, we don't eliminate them. And therefore, our ratios continue to be out of whack. And that's the part that most of us are kind of disqualifying. We say, well, we're eating pretty good. We're getting our grass-fed burgers. We're eating our fish. Little salmon here, maybe some sardines over here, some omega-3s in our eggs, and you're doing all these good things, but you're discounting the fact when you take in the canola oil, when you take in the cottonseed oil, when you take in all these bad processed oils, the body has a very difficult time getting it back out of the system. And as a result of that, then we have this really, really poor status, this ratio of omega-3s to 6s, and that's when we stay inflamed, and that is unfortunately when we start to put our brains at risk. So the actions that we want to take here, add a quality fish oil, and then retest. So do the test, do all these different things, and then retest. Usually about 90 days. This is an easy, actionable step you can take to see if you're protecting your brain. Folks, neurodegenerative diseases are going to be tripling by 2050. That should put us all a little bit in a little bit of a scare here. So we want to avoid these with everything that we possibly can. This is one of the ones that's just too easy. Omega-3s will build up the neurons. It protects the synapses. So we reduce brain inflammation, which of course then is linked to lower risk of dementia, Parkinson's, and also in Alzheimer's. So if you really do care about your brain, and especially down the road, you get to 50, 60, 70, 80 years old, care about your omega-3 levels today, eat clean, test your numbers, fix the gaps. Health really can be this simple. We can send you an omega test anywhere. I'll make sure there's a link below, and make sure that you look at this as one of these opportunities where, wow, there's something that got kind of exposed right? And we look at it instead of just frowning upon and beating up this company out there. And again, I always want to give a little bit of leeway to some of the companies. I think their intentions are usually really spot on when they start, and then they grow really fast, and sometimes they can't keep the standards up. So I'm giving them a little grace here, and I think you should do it also. And more importantly, look at this situation, go, why does this even matter to me? And if it really does matter, what can I do about it? And I think the single most important thing we can do, and I love the fact that in a weird way that this happened, so it brings attention to how important the omega-3s are, especially, and listen, most often we think about it relative to inflammation, but I'm going to tell you it's probably brain protection is my number one driving kind of motivation to get people to understand their omega-3 to omega-6 ratios and make sure they have enough omega-3 status circling around in their blood. All right, with that being said, folks, thanks for listening in here. Keep doing the thing, keep sharing us out, keep spreading the love, and of course, taking deliberate action for your mind, your body, overall wellness. Y'all be awesome.